Hi, I'm Zach. You're watching a product review from MakeUseOf.com. Today the product we're going to be reviewing is the Jackery Explorer 2000 Pro. This is the latest solar powered generator from Jackery in their Explorer series. And here at Make Use Of, we're big fans of Jackery products. Last year we gave favorable reviews to their Explorer 1000 and Explorer 1500 models, praising their premium quality design and their high capacity and high power output. And this year, with the release of the Explorer 2000 model, Jackery added Pro to the end of the title. So stick around to the end of the video. I'll be going over all of the Explorer 2000's key features and what, if anything, sets it apart from Jackery's previous models and if it lives up to its Pro title. So this is going to be a little bit different in terms of unboxing, as we'll get into. This is actually a pretty large package that comes with a bunch of different components that have to be shipped separately. But let's talk a little bit first about what this thing actually is. Jackery has their Explorer series listed as solar generators, which might be a little bit confusing. They're actually just massive lithium-ion batteries that can be charged via solar power, specifically through Jackery's SolarSaga series of solar panels. And with the Explorer 2000 Pro, Jackery has released their newest series of solar panels, the SolarSaga 200s. And on their website, you can purchase a bundle with your Explorer 2000 Pro of either 2, 4, or 6 of the SolarSaga 200s. And that's actually why the unboxing portion of this video is a little bit different than normal, because all of these components are actually pretty big and have to be shipped separately. And Jackery was kind enough to provide me with their largest package of 6 of their SolarSaga 200 panels. So that's the package I'm going to be reviewing in this video. And with that, let's get to the unboxing. In the package, the Explorer 2000 Pro comes with an AC charging cable and a car charging cable. I think the inclusion of both of these cables is really great, but honestly, they're probably just meant as backup options. Not only would charging this thing with an AC cable probably run up your utility bill by quite a bit, but it's called the solar generator for a reason. The main way you're going to be powering this thing up is through the solar panels. And as you can probably tell from the intro of this video, this thing is pretty heavy. It's about 43 pounds. And that's not so much a criticism of the device as it is just something you should probably be aware of, and a limitation of battery technology as it is. Batteries are just heavy. The SolarSaga 200 panels come in just regular shipping boxes and in these really high quality carrying cases that I'm a big fan of. The cases zip up on either side and have a clamp in the middle, and on the inside there's an interior pocket that has the DC input cable that connects the panels to the Explorer 2000. Lastly, Jackery sent me 2 of their solar generator connectors. They're essentially just DC input splitter cables for the solar panels. In Jackery's Explorer series, the model number is always roughly equivalent to how many watt hours of power the battery can output. So in the Explorer 2000 Pro's case, that's 2,160 watt hours of power with 4,400 watts at peak surge. So that's a pretty large capacity, and it's probably more than capable of charging the first electronic device that comes to your mind. Charging a phone or a laptop is pretty easy for it, and even larger things like a microwave, it can power for shorter amounts of time. I'll go into a little more detail about the types of devices that it can power when we get into capacity and testing. But for now, let's just talk about the other main features on the Explorer 2000. So on the front of the Explorer 2000, you've got this screen right here that's the main display, and is an LCD backlit screen that you can activate by pushing this display button right here. In the middle, you'll see it's got this nice ring around the percentage that shows how much charge is left in the Explorer 2000. And then on either side of the percentage, you've got the input and output in watts. So if I had a solar panel plugged in right now, it would tell me in watts how much power is coming into the Explorer 2000. And if I had anything else plugged into any of the outputs, it would tell me how much each of those devices is using. I think this is super intuitive. I feel like I didn't know a lot about this stuff and I was kind of intimidated by it, but the Explorer 2000 Pro makes everything really easy to understand. On opposite sides of the screen, you've got the DC output right here. And on the other side, covered up, we've got an emergency light. So you push that, it's got a couple different settings. It can get pretty bright. There it is, there's one that blinks. And below that are all of the other outputs. And much like the display and the light, all the outputs are a simple one-touch activation, which I'm also a really big fan of. There are 3 standard AC outputs, 2 USB-C and 2 USB-A. So just as a quick example, I've got some spare camera batteries that need charging. So I can use this to plug into one of the 3 AC outputs. Simple touch. The screen will light up in just a second here. It'll tell me how much energy is being used to charge these batteries. 10 watts. One touch to turn off the AC outputs. And this charger, I can switch it over to a USB-C, or sorry, USB type A. Same thing, plug it in on this side. One touch to activate. And the wattage output. And last but not least, we've got the inputs on the back of the Explorer 2000. Right here, we've got 2 DC inputs, and these are the cables that the solar panels take. And we've also got the AC input in case you want to use this cable to charge it instead. So now we can start looking at performance and testing, but before we get to the Explorer 2000 Pro itself, let's talk about the SolarSaga 200 solar panels. Much like the Explorer series of solar generators, the number at the end roughly equates to the power of the device. So the SolarSaga 200s have a peak power input of 200 watts. On one side, they have a DC power output that the cable plugs into, that then feeds into the Explorer 2000. And on the back of the panels, there are 3 magnetically strapped kickstands that can help you angle the panels towards the sun. They look just like the ones on the back of the SolarSaga 100 if you're familiar with that model. And while we're talking about previous iterations of the SolarSaga panels, it might be useful to keep in mind that the SolarSaga 100s are compatible with the Explorer 2000 Pro, because honestly, after some of my experience and testing, I might have actually preferred to have the SolarSaga 100s or even the SolarSaga 60s, an even smaller version that Jackery offers. The main reason for that is just because of how big the SolarSaga 200s are. When the SolarSaga 200s are fully unfolded, they're 7.5 feet long. And the DC input cables are only about 10 feet long, so there's really not a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can arrange them or place them in relation to the Explorer 2000. Because remember, the SolarSaga panels only have the single output for the connector cable to go into on the back right side. So placing the panels on the front left side of the generator leaves hardly any slack in the cable. And the first time I charged this, and the first several times that I was trying to test these panels, it was actually difficult for me to find a space big enough without there being any shade from tree lines or whatever else that was nearby. And when they are all unfolded, they take up quite a bit of space. This is as densely as I could possibly pack them together. I measure that's about 15 feet long, and then they're 7.5 feet wide across. So that's a decent patch of land that they need to occupy. And there is no spot in my backyard or front yard or driveway that wasn't at least a little bit covered in shade after the sun would move throughout the course of testing and stuff like that. My neighbor was nice enough to let me set these up in his yard for a little while, so I did get to charge them up under optimal conditions. But practically setting up 6 solar panels that are this large and take up this amount of space might be tough to negotiate sometimes. Some of the promotional images on Jackery's website illustrate this in a way that's kind of comical to me. This one of this tent out in the middle of this massive open field with the mountains in the background would obviously be pretty ideal, but I don't know that every camping situation is going to quite look like that. I think this other one they have of the family is a little more realistic. Also, the way that the panels are placed in that photo, they're a little more bunched together, which is, in my experience, more accurate. I think that the way that they're spaced out in that other photo, they probably can't even all reach the Explorer 2000 from where they are. So in comparison to the SolarSaga 100s, they're about half that size. They have one seam down the middle and fold in half, whereas the SolarSaga 200s have 3 different creases and they fold into quarters. So just because of how big and bulky they are, I would maybe reconsider which panels I would want to get with the Explorer 2000. Or at the very least, I think if I end up using this much in the future, I probably won't set up a full 6 panels at a time. Just using 3 panels or even 1 or 2 can still get a consistent power input. Now let's talk a little bit more about the power input. In my testing, it did take me a few attempts to find the optimal conditions that Jackery says are required to charge the Explorer 2000 in the 2.5 hours that the 6 panels are capable of. Partially just because you need the perfectly sunny weather, and also because of the shadows and finding the space required, like I mentioned. But even once I was finally able to set up all 6 panels on a perfectly sunny day with no shadows obstructing them at all, I think the SolarSaga 200s leave a little bit to be desired in terms of performance. The best results I got out of a single panel connected to the Explorer 2000 was 170 watt input, and it usually fluctuated between 140 and 170, somewhere in that range. On a slightly more overcast day, you can expect that to be more around the 40 or 70, so it's still receiving an input of power. And just to be clear, I was never expecting a fully perfect 200 watt input. There's always bound to be a few inefficiencies with stuff like this, so I don't think it's realistic to expect a full 200 watt input, so 170 is actually pretty good. So moving on from individual panels, I'll just go straight into connecting 3 at once using the solar generator connectors. Very consistently got 470 watt input. And again, this is under optimal conditions. So really sunny day, no clouds, and no obstructions to the panels at all. 3 of the SolarSaga 200s would get 470 watts. And that was a pretty consistent input. There wasn't a lot of fluctuation in there. Again, not bad. Theoretically, 3 of these things could get 600 watts of input, but 470, especially as consistent as it was, I was pretty happy with. And then finally, with all 6 of the panels connected on an optimally sunny day, the highest input I was able to achieve was 920 watts. So again, theoretically, under these optimal conditions, 6 of these 200 watt panels should achieve a 1200 watt input. And while I don't expect them to be perfect, 920 watts for a maximum of all 6 of these does feel a little low to me. That's more than a whole panel's worth of input being lost. I think maybe the solar generator connectors could be part of what's making them lose some of their efficiency, since all 6 of them aren't going directly into the Explorer 2000, but it's tough to say for sure. And while it was difficult to get the optimal performance out of the SolarSaga 200s, and their performance does leave a little to be desired, it really doesn't feel like that much of a drawback for the full package in my opinion. And I think that's mostly because you can have the solar panels plugged into the Explorer 2000 while it's in use. That made charging it extremely convenient, and there's really no reason that you had to use all 6 panels at once. I found myself more often just plugging in 1 or 3 as I needed them. So maybe just take that into consideration when you are deciding how many panels you want for your Explorer. Or if the SolarSaga 200s are the panels that you want. Because honestly, my biggest gripe with them at this point is just how cumbersome they are. I've had to set this thing up a lot, and lugging around the big panels kind of got old for me. At this point, I honestly feel like I would prefer having smaller ones that are a little less powerful, and I would just have a couple of them set up while I'm using it. The overall performance of the Explorer 2000 Pro was extremely impressive. I ran a wide variety of electronic devices with varying needs of power, and everything worked just as normally as if I had just plugged it into a wall. It really puts into perspective just how much power 2000 watts is, because the vast majority of the devices I wanted to test don't need nearly that much power. Charging a phone or laptop, powering a Bluetooth speaker, a toaster, a blender, all these devices need a fraction of that power. So even running multiples of them at once, using all 3 AC outputs, a couple of the USB outputs for good measure, nothing seemed to slow down the Explorer 2000 in terms of performance and output. Cooking on a hot plate or making coffee all heated up at normal rates. I absolutely burned the roof of my mouth drinking this coffee though, I got a little too excited. And even when I tried pushing the Explorer 2000 to its limit by finding a device that drew about 2000 watts of power, this hairdryer for example, I never noticed any changes in the performance of my electronics. There really is no slowing this thing down, and it's made all the more impressive by the fact that you can charge this thing while it's in use. Having your solar panels plugged into the back, providing power to the Explorer 2000 while you have a multitude of devices plugged into the front is incredibly satisfying, and the simple LED display lets you know exactly how many watts are coming in and coming out at any given time. There's really not even much else I can say in terms of performance. This thing is a workhorse, and 2,160 watt-hours of power goes a long way. The Explorer 2000 Pro is easily the most premium design we've seen from Jackery thus far. Everything about the Explorer 2000 Pro feels like it's built to last and like a major step up from previous iterations. Even simple fixes like having the handle be able to fold down and be flush with the top goes a really long way in terms of storage and transportation. And other not so simple improvements go even further to prove that this really is the pro version of the Jackery Explorer series. In our previous reviews for the Explorer 1000 and 1500 models, a major complaint was the noise output that the generator made while it's in use. In all of my testing with the 2000 Pro, I haven't heard a peep out of it. Seriously, this thing is absolutely silent. You could hook up a projector to this and have an outdoor movie night and it would be completely unnoticeable. So while the SolarSaga 200s weren't the ideal solar panels for me and maybe leave a little bit to be desired in terms of efficiency, the Explorer 2000 Pro absolutely lives up to its name. It's super easy to use, plug and play, one-touch activation for all of the outputs, and will last a really long time. And while the SolarSaga 200 panels are a bit on the bulky side and are a little less efficient than I would have liked them to be, the fact that you can use them to charge the Explorer 2000 Pro while it's powering other devices is insanely convenient. And if all else fails, the AC input cable can fully power this thing in just 2 hours. So this thing absolutely lives up to the Pro in its name. Whether you're preparing for a grid down scenario or you just want to enjoy the luxuries of electricity while you're out camping, the Jackery Explorer 2000 Pro is a best-in-class solar-powered generator. Thank you so much for watching this product review with MakeUseOf.com. If you found this video to be helpful, maybe leave a like or a comment below or consider subscribing. Make Use Of uploads reviews for the newest tech products every single week. So thanks again for watching and we'll see you next time.